other people online from Edutech. Kelly Rexine is with me. He'll be back in the chat window supporting any questions you may have. I'll go over on how to post those questions in just a minute here. And also I have Jason Matthias online. He's in Garrison. He's going to be also providing some support today, answering questions and adding users as we're kind of going through that type of stuff. And I believe I have Rob Bauer from DPI on. Is that right, Rob? Oh, yeah, it looks like Rob Bauer's on.
Yes, that's right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Rob. Thank you. Thank you. And then there might be some other people from Cambium and the assessment group joining us later. And also
Bonnie Weiss is on as well.
Yep, and Bonnie Weiss from DPI is on also. So like I said, welcome everybody. This is a Teams meeting. So right now some of you may be in the web version of that. Teams is a very useful tool for online meetings like this. It's kind of a hub for everything that you can do in a classroom or in an organizational standpoint at your school. I'm just going to show you just as we're going through some of the functionalities you have access to. So I'm just going to share my desktop right now. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, there is some buttons here that you can use. It's probably not necessary for you to have to turn your camera on during the session, but the mic right next to it as I'm hovering over this, you can click on and off that to mute your mic. If I click mute, you will see that line go through this microphone there. And then also you will see this show conversation tab right here. And that is where, if you click on that, you will see a conversation thread here, which we will be posting different messages. You can see Kelly has made some announcements this morning, just kind of giving you some tips about this webinar. And you can also post questions in this chat window as we're going along, and we will answer those in the background as necessary, but you will also have time to ask questions during the meeting. Okay, so just those are about the only three things you have to kind of know about functioning within this webinar. I am going to be switching between, I'm going to share my screen and you are going to see a presentation and we'll be going through that. So I'm going to share that right now. Okay. And you're going to get the link to this in just a moment here, so you have this resource. Okay, so like I said, the training team that is put together with Edutech and DPI, Edutech, we do the trainings for the NDSA assessment each year just to get you prepared. These are the Edutech members that are involved with the training. So like I said, Kelly and Jason are online today. Tyler might be joining us a little bit later. We also do face-to-face trainings throughout the state and start next week. Okay, an overview, just a quick little reminder of some things going on at Edutech right now. I'm going to click on the links and kind of show you. So if you go to Edutech's website, you'll see a lot of opportunities. One of our main focuses right now is computer science, especially with the computer science standards. So you can see a lot of offerings for code.org trainings, middle and high school curriculum, if you want on-site training, or I'm sorry, in-person training with that. Those opportunities are available. We also have a program called Ask Me, and Ask Me is a program where you can be connected to professionals in STEM industries. So you can have these professionals give presentations to your students about those types of careers. So if you have, and anytime you want to learn more about that, all you do is click on the read more section here on our banner. Okay. And then the Dakota Strike initiative. That's a Career Expo 2020. That's on April 8th at the Fargo Dome. That's a pretty large event. If you want to learn more about that, that might be something that you'll be interested in with your students. Cybersecurity conference is coming. That is if you've never been to a cybersecurity conference and you want to learn a lot more about cybersecurity, a lot of very valuable sessions at this conference, and a lot of eye-opening stuff that deals with online safety and stuff like that. And then our middle school cyber teacher endorsement, if you've never taken any of those before, it's with the NYSERC curriculum. So the NYSERC, we partnered with NYSERC to provide free curriculum to teachers so that they can teach computer science and cybersecurity standards and concepts. So these are going to be a 4-part training with one of those being online. So just pay attention if you have people that are teaching computer science, this may be something that they want to look into. Okay, and then the Girls Go Cyber Start, sorry. Free extracurricular online program to introduce girls to cybersecurity. And there is cash prizes for the top scoring teams. So another opportunity to get your students involved in cybersecurity. And then the NDSA trainings, which we're doing today, the webinar. Then lastly is the code.org elementary curriculum trainings that we're holding all over the place. If you click on read more, you can see all of the locations for those. And those are free. So, okay. All right, and then if you click on these other links, when you get this way, you'll see all of our different training options. We do a lot of face-to-face training. We present at a lot of conferences throughout the state, and just mainly focusing on how you can better utilize technology in your classrooms and those type of topics. Contact information for everybody in EduTech if you click on that link, and then the help desk. I believe Jerry is online, Geraldine Burke, who is the help desk, part of the help desk, and she's always willing to answer questions if you have any about NDSA. Okay, so hit this link here. I want you guys to bookmark this. You can open a new browser. If you have another browser open, open another window and maybe type that into your address bar there and get connected to this way, okay? And this is going to be updated quite often as we're going through this process. Things are changing quickly. And Kelly just posted the link to that in the conversation, which I showed you earlier. If you click on the conversation bubble, you can click the link and open it up. So I'll give you a couple minutes. If you have a problem or anything, just let us know. Just get that link in a browser window, and you can be viewing that also, or you can share that with others in your school as a resource. If you've never used Sway before, it's part of your Office 365 tools, and it's kind of like a website. It's a little different than PowerPoint. The reason I like it, you don't have as much control over like the design features, but at the same time, if you can kind of let that go, it kind of designs it for you. But the nice thing about this is when I make a change, I don't have to send you a new copy of a PowerPoint to download again. You can just open this link up again and you'll receive those updates will be on your screen without having to really do anything. So as long as you have that link, you'll be able to get back to this, and as I'm updating and changing this throughout the process, you will see that. So this might look a little bit different in a couple weeks here, but this is the most current information that we have today. Okay, so we're going to go through. There's 6 or 7 different parts we're going to go through, and I'm assuming that most of you are going to play different roles at your school as far as how you are going to interact with the testing system. You know, we're going to talk about those roles. We're going to talk about, you know, kind of the differences between them, kind of whose responsibilities and type things each role has. Okay, so our part one, we're going to go through important dates with the new testing year. We're going to go through the different systems, and just to note this change right away before we even start, the online reporting system, which was where you see the student results and the testing results, that is being changed to what is called now Airways. Okay, we'll get a little bit deeper into that. We'll get deeper into that as soon as we get to that part. We'll go through the different user levels and what those mean. We'll go through the documents for this year's testing. The resources you will find that we're going to go through are very in-depth, detailed, a lot of good screenshots. The manuals and stuff, Cambium has put a lot of time and effort into those to make it easy for you to understand how to function within the testing system. Then we're going to go through the portal. We're going to go into the portal and make sure you see all the different systems that are in place and the current live systems on the portal. Okay, so here's our important dates, and you can see the Tide is live. Tide is the testing information distribution engine, and that's where all of our students and users live. User information, student information. What we're going to go into that in depth and go through the processes and functions within Tide. Non-participation codes will be available in April. We'll kind of talk a little bit about that, but you know, at the end of testing, this will be responsibilities of more than likely the district test coordinator and the people handling those types of things. The TA certification, anybody administering NDSA tests have to take the TA certification course. It's an online tutorial. We'll go into that, and you'll actually have time at the very end of this if you want to stay online and do that during that last part of the training. You are more than welcome to do that, because I know as being a teacher, I was a teacher, it's to have built-in time to do something is always nice. So some time will be allowed for you to complete those TA certification courses. And it's about a 30-minute training. And then the NDSA, the ELA grades, we're testing grades 3 through 8 and grade 10. And that the testing window is March 16th to May 8th. And then the new part of the test this year is the science part of the test. And we're testing grades 4, 8, and 10 in science. And that is the same testing window as the summative tests, ELA and math. Okay. The Airways score reporting, the initial, the migration of existing results from the ORS, that was just completed a couple days ago. So all the results that were in the online reporting system have been transferred to the Airways reporting system. Okay. And the student results we'll talk about, you know, as students are testing, certain tests will be available near the results of those tests. Some of them will be available near real time. So you can see the scores almost instantaneously after they submit their tests. Okay. Okay, so let's go through some of these acronyms because we all just love acronyms, right? We hear a lot of those as being teachers, administrators, and so on. So here's some more for you. We have the Tide system. That's our distribution engine. And the information that populates Tide comes from overnight loads from STARS, okay, and then manual registrations. And we're going to talk a little bit about when the absolute necessity would be able to add a manual student in Tide, It's probably not going to come down to that case typically. You're going to get all the information that when you enter it into STARS, and it is uploaded nightly to Tide. Okay, so the necessity to add a student manually in Tide is probably going to be very uncommon. I think I say that correctly, and if Rob can confirm that for me, I guess he would be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
As long as STARS is kept up to date with current enrollment records, that should handle the daily updates from STARS should handle any need for movement or adding of students.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Okay, and then we have the testing delivery system. We'll go into that and we'll look at where you can find students' settings, accommodations. We'll talk about accommodations and tools within the testing system. And then, like I said, this ORS, the screenshot's a little, they're going to update this soon, but the ORS is now Airways, and then that's going to contain those reports. Okay, just an overview of the different user levels. Okay, the district administrator in Tide is more than likely going to be your superintendents of the school, and we'll look at each tasks or responsibilities each of these levels has within Tide in a little bit here. We'll go into further detail in part 3. The district test coordinator, that's going to be who's ever listed on your MISO 1s as that test coordinator director. And then the principals are going to be your school test coordinators. So if you got multiple districts or multiple schools in your district, you know, you might have different school test coordinators for the elementary, for the middle school, and so on. And then the two roles at the bottom, the test administrator and the teacher. These are, you know, the teacher role will be, and the test administrator role will be, we'll talk about the differences between those and kind of why there's two separate roles for those. Okay. All right. So a lot of updates. There's been, you know, a lot of documents. Like I said, these documents are all on the portal, and we're gonna go on the portal here in a little bit. I just want to touch base on what to expect when we go in there and look at these documents. So these are the key documents, and kind of to let you know that, you know, whether they're updated and so on. But just kind of keep this in mind as we're as we go in, when we go into the portal and do a little searching in there. Just kind of keep in mind that these are going to be the documents that are going to be available to you. And like I said, these documents are very valuable for, you know, all parts of the testing system, all the way from, you know, functioning within Tide to administering a test. Okay, so you want to make sure you're aware that these documents are there. So student and family documents, you know, we're going to look at the NDSA fact sheet when we get there. That's brand new. That was just updated a week ago. The overview page for Lexile and Quantile information, we'll take a look at that. Resources for those, tools and resources. For families to be able to view the NDSA, there's our students testing. We'll look at that. Training tests for math, ELA, and science. It's a very good idea that you, if you're administering tests, that you go through a practice test with your students. And, oh, sorry. So it's a good idea to go through the practice tests and administer a session as acting as a test administrator, so that you get familiar with the system and so that your students get familiar with the testing tools within the test. And we're actually I'm going to show you how to do that when we get to that part. The science practice test is going to be available on the 10th of February, the week of the 10th of February. And also the math and ELA training tests will be updated during that time also. So just be aware that these training tests, that if you log into them now, they're going to look a little bit different during that week of the 10th. So they're updating those. For those administering tests, the key documents, and this applies to not only anybody that's administering tests or working within TIDE. So the test administrators might want, they're going to administer tests, but they're also going to want to know how to do some functions within TIDE so they can print student lists or look at student accommodations and so on like that, and print testing tickets. So so that's the user guide will show those types of functions. The NDSA fact sheet, again, we'll take a look at that. The testing system test admin user guide. There's an administration manual, quick guide, and a TIDE quick guide. This test admin quick guide, when we get to the portal, we'll open it up and take a look at it, but it's a something you're probably going to want to have handy for all those that are administering tests to have as a resource, as a support. Student designated supports and accommodations. As far as I know, that document is coming soon. As soon as they kind of get together the different tools that are going to be available within the science test. So I'll update that as I find out more about that document. The NDSA memo folder, we'll take a look at that when we get to the portal. And then this is probably an important point, and I want to stress this. I'll show you where to do this, but you could also click on the link where it says subscribing for updates. But and I'll show you where it's at on the portal too, but it's going to be a good idea to subscribe to the portal. So when something changes on the portal, you'll get an email notification that change has been made. I find it very handy to know when an update has happened. So Cambium will put a announcement on the portal that something has updated or something has changed. When you subscribe, you'll get that message in an email. So we'll take a look at that. Probably a good idea to sign up for updates. The tech coordinators within the schools, the key documents that they're going to want to obviously have, the assistive technology manual. I will take a overview of that when we get to the portal. That's going to have your different text speech, things like that, how to set those up, voice packs and so on. The quick guide for setting up online testing technology, and then the operating system support plan for test delivery system. Okay, so we'll open those up and look at them when we get to the portal. Different from last year. And I'm going to emphasize this several times throughout this morning here, but each secure browser, the students must take the test in a secure browser. And any secure browsers that were used last year need to be uninstalled, and the new ones need to be installed for this year's version. Okay, so any machines that had the testing browser from last year need to be dumped and reinstalled for this year's browser. And each one of these, and we'll take a look at these browsers when we get to the manual. Like I said, this kind of this training applies to kind of all the facets of the testing, the process. So we're kind of focusing on each aspect of it. So in the manuals this year focus specifically for each operating system. So you see here configurations and troubleshooting for Android, for Linux, and then for each Chrome, Macs, and Windows. So each operating system has a different manual installation guide. Okay, so whatever devices you're using to test on, you have a manual resource for each of those devices types. Okay, and then just kind of a all-in-one place for everything, all the guides, because there's a lot of guides on the portal. So, you know, I kind of figured it'd be nice to have on this sway to have a link and a place for all of them kind of in an order where you could quickly access them if you wanted to use this resource. So all of the resources related to functioning, doing tasks within the TIDE system are underneath this TIDE resources bullet point here. So you have all of the logging in and anything from logging into TIDE to adding students to or managing students to adding users. You're going to find in any of these guides under the resources for TIDE. A lot of good, great screenshots within these guides, so it makes it easy to understand. Okay. All right, so systems that are currently live right now on the portal. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do an activity where we go and search the portal in just a little bit here. But this is when we get there. This is what you're gonna see. So the TIDE is live, like I said. You can log into TIDE, manage students, manage users, add users, and so on. And we're gonna take time to do that also. You have the secure inbox. So if you receive a message from AIR, or I'm sorry, Cambium, to your inbox, they may send you a message to there, or when you're downloading reports and so on, those will come to this inbox. We'll kind of go through that. We'll touch base a little bit on that, on downloading reports. That is actually something that just came out today, I believe. So the Airways system. So I haven't had a ton of time to investigate it, but we'll go into it a little bit. And then the secure browsers. I believe we just had a question in the chat window about secure browsers, and we'll go in there and we'll look at the ones that are available. They are available for download right now, the new versions. So we will look at those and then make sure if you have any questions about those, we can get those addressed. And then the training tests, you'll see the yellow tile for training tests. Those, like I said, the ELA and math tests, training tests are available now. They're going to be updated though, and then the science will be available during the week of the 10th of February. Okay. Okay, so let's, so part 2, we're going to go on the portal. And if you're in your sway right now, there's a link called, or we'll get there in just a second here, but I just want you to understand that there's a lot of links in this sway, and you know, we can just click on them and be brought to where we need to be. So in part 2, we're going to go through the portal. We're going to talk about the document. We're going to go a little further into the documents for that we talked about for students and families, test administrators, and tech coordinators, and so on. We're going to go through the updates for this year, the new things that are new this year, differences from last year. We're going to go into logging in and creating passwords in the TIDE system and the test system. Now this may cause, or we may have to do some adding of users, and we'll get that kind of taken care of when we get there, because I don't know, we'll kind of see where everybody's at when we get there, and we may have to add users and so on, because I'm not sure who's all in the system at this time. If you've never been part of the NDSA testing process, you're probably not in the system because you'd have to be added to TIDE previously. So when we get to that point, we'll talk about that, and we'll add and figure things out as we go here. excuse me. We'll talk about accommodation updates to universal tools also, the updates to those, and we'll talk about browsers and the browsers used by the tester, the person delivering the test, what types of requirements are for those browsers. Because remember, or I guess I haven't mentioned it yet, but the test administrator can administer a test from any browser, any updated browser, approved browser. I mean, you're going to find pretty much all of them, but the students have to take the test in a secure browser. Okay, so administer a test in any browser. Students have to take the test in the secure browser on their machines. Okay, so if you're in this way, if you're not, you can just type this into your address bar in your another tab. But it's ndsa.portal.airast.org. And when you get there, you will see a very similar screenshot as to here. I'm actually going to switch over to the portal, so we're all in the same place. Okay. And Kelly has also placed that link in the chat window. Okay, so you can see here, you can see that there's been recent announcements, very recent actually, just yesterday, talking about rosters. We'll talk about that a little more in depth of what that message means, that they're explaining right there. And then it's talking about North Dakota State Assessment Update, student enrollment records. All records have been updated and transferred to the TIDE system. So, like Rob said earlier, any new additions to your school, students and so on, those changes should be updated nightly if the information is entered into STARS. And then the student accommodations accessibility supports, and we're going to reemphasize this again, but there has been a statewide upload from TINET. So if a student had an accommodation written in an IEP in TINET, those were automatically transferred over to the TIDE system, the test settings for that student on January 22nd, 2020. Anything after that date, after the 22nd, you'll have to do a manual upload from TINET. And I have a document that will show you how to complete that. I don't believe there is going to be another upload, a statewide upload before the testing. So I'll show you how to do that manually. And then, excuse me, the Student Assessment Division, which was AIR last year, the assessment portion of AIR has been taken over by Cambium Assessment. Just be aware of that change. And then you can see these announcements on the portal here. So you can see, just like on the tiles on the screenshots I had, we have our student and family resources, anything to do with the assessment over here, and then tech coordinators. If I'm going to click on student and families, the tile, if anybody wants to follow along, you can do that. The training tests are available right here. So if I click on training test, and this is anybody in the public can go and take these. If they're, if parents that are stakeholders in the school that are interested in what exactly this testing is all about, they can go take these training tests. So it kind of become familiar with the system, functionality, and the types of items. So just kind of, just be aware that that is available. And then you can see these documents along the right here. The top two there, were updated yesterday. So we're gonna take a look at the user guide, Airways reporting system when we kind of get to that point. Like I said, since it was just available yesterday, I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, so we'll kind of go through it together. But the people that will be viewing reports and so on will want to know how to navigate and navigate the reporting system, the Airways reporting system. So this user guide and the PowerPoint that are available will have resources for navigating that Airways. And then the documents, these are just links to those types of calculators. So if somebody's doing this at home and doing a test at home, a training test, and they want to use these types of calculators, they can access those. And then the NDSA fact sheet, I'm going to open that up. Just kind of what we already talked about at the beginning there. We'll go through some of these testing tool, the updates to those tools in just a minute here. But just reiterating that the science assessment is for grades 4, 8, and 10. And then the Airways is replacing the ORS, which we've already talked about. And then again, the grade levels and so on for each test. Some great tips on preparing for testing. Just be aware that each test administrator must have an account in Tide in order to give online assessments. If you don't have a Tide account, somebody at your district has to add you to the Tide system, okay? Somebody that's in Tide. The DTC District Test Coordinator position role is probably, I guess it's probably going to be assigned by DPI, I believe. So I think that, so if the district test coordinator would have access to that, they can add roles, and so can the school test coordinators. So we'll talk about that a little more when we get in depth for the user roles and so on. If you're registered in Tide last year, you will be required to update your password. We'll go through that whole process, what that requires. And then the online TA certification course, which I mentioned, must be completed by anybody administering a test prior to the testing window. They must take the course regardless if you took it last year. If you took it last year, you have to take it again. Accessibility and accommodations. Ensure all student test settings are correctly set in Tide at least 24 hours before the administering a test. There's no paper pencil test available. However, if you have the need for Braille and print on demand, those accommodations are available, but remember, those are accommodations. Spanish language supports are available. You'll see those. I'll show you a screenshot a little bit later of the testing window and those being available. Okay. Some parts of the reading assessments, reading assessments might require headphones. So want to make sure that your students have access to listening devices, headphones and so on for those parts of the test. And then if you, like I said, the Braille booklet orders can be placed online if you have that need, if you have students that have that need. Again, the training tests, like I had said, test administrators they can administer training tests to students to familiarize them with the student interface and check that non-embedded tools. So some of the speech to text software and so make sure those are functioning properly. They may take the students might take the training test as many times as desired using any supported browser. But if you do have the secure browser, you can take it in the secure browser also. So it can just be like a simulation of taking the real test. And like I said, we're going to go through that process so you become familiar with it. Operational tests, students must take those using a secure browser. Ensure that it is installed on all testing devices in advance of taking the test, of administering the test. Students only have a single opportunity to take each assessment. If a test is not submitted by the end of the testing window, it will expire. So it's not a time test, but once they complete a certain section of a test and they're done for the day, they obviously won't be able to go back and answer those questions that they've already submitted. The tests, are there stopping points in the test? The test in each subject can be administered in multiple time segments. They do not need to be based on the number of questions completed. They can start up a new session where they left off in the last session, just like I had just mentioned. They'll not be able to go back to questions from previous sessions. If students have a 60-minute test period, the TA can tell students with about 10 minutes left that they have that amount of time left to review everything and make sure they have finalized their answers on the questions that they've been going through. Is there a waiting period between reading and writing? The ELA portion, NDSA will be administered in 2 separate tests. Okay, so the reading and the writing. The test administrators will have the option to administer both the reading and writing in one test session, or to break it up and administer them into 2 separate sessions. So it's kind of up to your school. It might get a little heavy if they're taking those tests right in a row, but it's kind of up to your school as to how you want to deal with that. But just remember, they are 2 separate tests, the reading and the writing. Score reporting will be available in Airways beginning January 28th, 2 days ago. All the scores from the online reporting system have been migrated over to the Airways system. So if you have access to the score reports, you would be able to go see previous year's results in the Airways. Okay. ELA and math only will generally be available after completion, after students complete their tests. So when they hit submit, near real time, the ELA reading portion and the math will be available near real time. The writing portion, it could take up to 10 days to get those results back as they go through a process, a grading process. And the science results will be available in early fall of 2020. And I believe that is due to the standards, the writing of the standards. Is that correct, Rob? Sorry, Rob, if I'm putting you on the spot. You might not be listening. So some tests may...
would you repeat the question?
Yeah, the science results will be available in fall of 2020 due to the standards being finalized. Is that correct?
The standard setting, which basically is establishing the cut scores.
Okay.
So we can't have test results without establishing the cut scores for each of the proficiency levels, and the exercise is going to be done over the summer.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Okay. So yeah, so like I said, the writing portion, some facets of the writing prompts might take some scoring, some hand scoring. So those will be available, like I said, up to 10 business days after completion of that writing portion of the test. Authorized users can access scores and performance information for prior school years on Airways. Now, when we get to the portion on user roles and what you can do, you will notice that if you're assigned as a test administrator in TIDE, you won't have access to reports. The people that should have access to reports are teachers, administrators, and so on. If you have a para or a person helping administering tests that don't need access to reports, we're going to take, that's kind of the difference between the TA and the TE role, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into that. So authorized users, depending on their role in TIDE, will have access to scores and so on, performance information. So a lot of good information in this fact sheet. So it's something you might want to distribute to your anybody involved with testing this year. So like I said, there's a lot quantile, Lexile, and quantile information. These are the same as there's no changes to these documents over the last couple of years, so those remain the same. And then the operating procedures for viewing the NDSA. If we take a quick look at that, so it can only be viewed at a testing location. It explains how to take a look, how they can take a look at that. So requests from parents and so on, stakeholders or whoever is going to have access to that. Make sure you read this standard operating procedure before sharing any results or so on. Okay, so those are kind of the student and family resources categorization, categorized as student and family resources. And you'll notice in the portal here, I can go back to home and get to an NDSA assessment tile or the tech coordinators tile, but I can also click this drop down up here where it says users, and I can go to NDSA assessment instead of going back to home. So just kind of be aware of that drop down. So I'm going to go to the NDSA assessment page. And just like the screenshot showed, here is what's available as of right now. The TIDE system is live, available. The training test administration. So if you're going to administer a training test in as you would when the normal test, when not normal, but when the actual operational test comes, you want to simulate that in a training test. You will use this training test administration login to do that. Like I said, we're gonna go through that process. Here's this tile just showed up today, I believe. So the Airways reporting, that's the new reporting system. That's where you would go to view reports. The test administrator certification that all test administrators have to take. Anybody administering a test has to take this. This is where they would go to take that. And once they complete that, their status within TIDE will update to yes, they've completed that certification, and they will be able to administer tests after completion of that. If you've never taken the certification, your status is N right now for no, you haven't taken it yet. So without taking it, you wouldn't be able to administer a test. So you have to take this certification. We have administration resources, and like I said, the inbox for when you're going to export reports and so on, or if you're looking up users, you can export documents of users to the inbox and available for download and so on. Okay. So so those are kind of the main tiles, and this will be coming when the test window opens, the test administration tile. So just be aware that is grayed out right now, but on March, it's not good when you forget the date already. March 16th, that tile will be available. And then here's those documents on the right here. The key documents. The top one again, the Airways Reporting System User Guide. It's brand new. Was just posted yesterday. The Assistive Technology Manual. We're going to talk about that when we get over to the tech coordinators resources. Here's that Braille book order form. The Accessibility Manual. I'm going to open that up really quick. And this is if I scroll down on the Accessibility Manual, supports and recognizing the needs for all learners. So it explains, you know, providing accessibility, those that are on an IEP 504 plans and so on. Approach to accessibility. Supports and instruction may not be allowed on a specific standardized assessment because certain supports may change the construct of the item. So just be aware of those different rules and things towards accommodations, accessibility. Universal features, those are going to be embedded. Depending on the type of question it's going to be, you know, the students are going to have access to different tools within the testing system. So example, and we go a little bit further into that when we get to the testing interface and so on. But example of that would be an answer choice eliminator. So like a strike through. So a student's answering a question and they rule out that 2 of the 4 are not an answer. They can strike through those to know they've already kind of went through those and went through it in their mind that they reduced those answers. And then there are also going to be non-embedded tool features and so on. That would be scratch paper. Just make sure that any scratch paper that is used by a student, that it is destroyed at the end of the testing session. Okay, and the universal tools are available to all learners as they access instructional or assessment content. Okay. Making decisions, although those features are generally available to all learners, educators may determine that 1 or more might be distracting for a particular learner. Because those are available to all learners, they do not require, you know, written within an IEP. So educators, you know, you need to make sure that you pay attention to those features that are frequently used to ensure those features are appropriate in meeting those learners' instructional and assessment needs. So if you feel a need that, you know, a student needs a certain tool within a test to be successful, that, you know, you add that in their settings and so on. And then we have a designated features. They're for use by any learner. So some of the embedded designated features like color contrast, provided digitally through instruction or assessment technology. Those will be, you know, available within the test settings. They can choose their contrast and so on to whatever they read better on certain backgrounds or certain contrasts. They're going to be provided just digitally through the instructional assessment technology. There might be some non-embedded ones that aren't built within the tests that, you know, if you have a magnifying glass or something, if a student needs that, that would be an example of a non-digital designated feature. Okay, so it talks a little more about making decisions about designated features. The accommodations, like I said, those are written within an IEP 504 or ILP, and a statewide upload from TyNet happened on January 22nd. So if a student with an IEP 504 indicated in TyNet was, you know, entered in there, anything up to January 22nd, those tools are going to be available to those students. And then if anything after January 22nd, I will give you a document that shows you how to do a manual upload from TyNet. Okay, and then here's some decisions about making decisions about accommodations. Okay, a lot of detail. There's a lot in this document. Goes into some of the laws and so on, but just be aware that it's there for you so that you fully understand kind of the difference between the issues that deal with accessibility. Okay, so NDSA scheduling the NDSA. This is actually out of date. I have a screenshot, an updated screenshot later in the SWAY that has the testing times and so on, estimated testing times, which includes the science portion of the test. So this document, I guess I'll find out when that's going to be updated. So this link takes you to the last year's, which doesn't include the science piece. So like I said, this is updating on a daily basis. So I'll change that and link it to the correct document once that gets updated. It's actually within a different document. I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's within another document, the times and so on. But this is right now still on the portal and separate, so I don't know if they're going to continue that link or they're just going to say it's in that other manual. NDSA administering tests, a PowerPoint. That's going to be something that your test administrators, might want to have as a resource, so they, feel comfortable administering tests. But the test administration, test administrator certification course is really going to provide a great detail on how to administer tests. So that's why it's so important for them to take that certification. We have the fact sheet again, which we already went over. There's just some, some of these I'm not going in depth, but feel free to check them out. Proposed testing times, again, that's going to be updated. The writing rubrics, so the 3 through 5 informational prompt, these are all staying the same for the writing portion for those different grades. So you see they're all available right there. And then the online testing system, the test administrator user guide. So if I'm going to click on that one. So any person administering the test should probably kind of go through this. It's a lengthy document, but if they have any questions, they're going to find most of the answers in this document. Goes in depth of the different rules, test timeout. We're gonna, I touch base on that again down this little further into this way. Like I said, the screenshots within these are very impressive. So it goes into detail and pictures to accommodate those. So yeah, so this test administrator manual, you're going to find as a valuable resource. Also, the quick guide, actually, I'm going to go into this next one when we get to the tech coordinators section, but it applies to more than just tech coordinators. So that's why it's also as a key document here, but we're going to look at it in the tech coordinators. This is the same document that we kind of looked at for the standard operating procedures. The test administration manual. Click on that one really quick. This is a manual that it's before testing, during testing, after testing, the scheduling of it, and this is so this is the manual which I mentioned before that has the updated proposed testing times, and this is a screenshot that you're going to see in the SWAY also. So this one, I'm not sure if they're keeping that other link to proposed testing times. I guess we'll find out soon. So this is we're going to go through this a little more, like I said, a little bit deeper into the SWAY, but just be aware that it is in this specific manual. Talks about security during testing, the test administrator responsibilities, security of the test materials. Okay, so a lot of good stuff in these manuals, like I said. Okay, just so you know that they're there for you to access. The quick guide, this is the one that I had mentioned that you're going to want to have this probably available to anyone administering the tests. So if you click on the quick guide, it has screen by screen, step-by-step shots of how to start a test. Okay, this is the screenshot, the TA interface, what it's going to look like when the science piece is going to be with the science piece being added in. Well, no, I'm sorry, that was a mistake on my part. That's the screenshot. We're going to take a look in just a minute here. You'll see one a little bit further. But you'll see that when you start a test, you're going to sign in, you know, and create that session ID. And like I said, we're going to go through this whole process. And once you have that ID information, you're going to give that to the students. They'll log in with their student ID information and that session ID information, and then that will bring them into the test. Okay, so just be aware that, okay, so this is the manual that I said you might want to have access to. All test administrators should have this probably printed out and you know, locate somewhere where they can locate it easily. They're going to want to go through this document. But the TA certification will go through all of this information. Okay, and then the TIDE guides, managing student test settings, the TIDE quick guide, settings update process, and so on. A user guide, we're going to go into TIDE actually and look at those specifically. So I'm not going to necessarily go into each guide specific or separately because we're actually going to perform these operations as we're in there. Okay, so those are the key documents and the tiles within the NDSA assessment tile. So if I go back home here, this NDSA assessment, that's where that took me, right to that tile page. Lastly, if we click on tech coordinators, here's that assistive technology manual that I just mentioned we'd go into when we get here. So I'm going to click on that really quick. So it's going to go through if a tech coordinator needs to know how to, you know, what to do with some of this technology, speech to text, screen magnifiers, assistive keyboard and mouse input technology, text to speech. So those types of things, if a tech coordinator has needs information on how to install those or where they're at, this is where you're going to find all of that information. Okay, so here's the different modes when testing with speech to text technology. What has to happen, what types of settings within those different operating systems. So that's speech to text. So that would be, you know, something if a student had that accommodation of how to configure that. So like I said, there's all the different the specific operating systems and how to perform those functions with assistive technology. Okay, so just be aware that that's there. Here's all of the manuals for each operating system. Pretty rare, but Linux is one of the options. If you do use Linux at your school, that would be a PDF on how to set those for the secure browsers and the configurations. And then the Chrome, I know there's many schools that test with Chromebooks. So if you click on the configurations troubleshooting for Chrome OS, if you go down, it will have all of the information for how to, the configurations first of all, for those different websites and so on. But not only that, but it goes into how to install it from the Google Management Air Secure Kiosk app. So it goes step by step on how to install those. So a lot of great information. Like I said, these manuals have everything you need to know. And those are, like I said, specific to each operating system. So if you test with Macs, you're going to find it in the guide for Mac. Test with Windows, you'll find it in the guide for Windows. And then down here, operating system support plan for test delivery system. Take a quick look at that. Scroll down a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, so support. So this table has the operating systems and those kind of anticipated end of support dates. So Windows 7 is no longer going to be SPI, Professional and Enterprise. That's going to be discontinued at the end of this year. Support for that version of Windows. So if you're wondering about the previous upcoming years, you know, and if you have these operating systems in your schools on your machines, you're going to want to pay attention to those dates. Okay, so a lot of information there. And this more than likely will apply to your tech coordinators that are going to set up the testing devices for your students. Okay, and we're going to take a look at a similar chart like this, and we'll take a look at where to find all of the browsers. Okay. And again, I imagine they'll be updating all of these documents. They'll be changing this AIR wording to the Cambium assessment group. Kind of be aware of that. I guess I can't really speak on that, but I would imagine that would happen. Okay, so the last kind of guide, key document for tech coordinators is this quick guide for setting up your online technology. So test administrator workstations. So just make sure that you have a supported, updated version of a browser. Like I said, the test administrator can test from any browser, any supported browser. So, you know, more than likely, I know it's never good to assume anything, but I'm assuming your browsers are updated automatically. But, you know, just check with your tech coordinators if you're not sure about that. But most are updated automatically. But as long as you're running that updated version of that browser and you're administering tests within that browser, you should be good to go. Setting up the student workstations, just making sure that those settings are in place, making sure the new version of the secure browsers are installed on each of those devices. And then this goes through the minimal requirements for each device that will be tested on, the processing, and so on. So again, something that, you know, just look through if you're a tech coordinator, make sure that your machines meet all those specifications. So yeah, a lot of great information. Disabling some of the features on a Mac that you might have to look at if you do test with Macs, disabling Siri and fast user switching, keyboard shortcuts for screenshots. So there's some specific things that you may have to do depending on what devices you're testing with. Okay, so this provides all that information. Okay, so those are the main documents for tech coordinators. I'm going to click on secure browsers, and we could have got here a couple different ways. I could click here, or if I go back to home, I click on secure browser here. So I'm going to click on this one. So just be aware that, a lot of times you're going to find information or several ways of going the same route, getting to the same destination within the portal. I guess before that, I just kind of forgot to point out that the supported browsers for the testing, the devices you're using to administer tests, you can find those up on the top here, supported browsers right here. Click on that. Here's all of the supported browsers for administering tests. So Chrome, anything above 75, Firefox 60 above, and so on, Edge. So you can take a look at those. Okay, so the secure browsers, which have to be installed on all testing machines, you'll find here. If I click on secure browsers, you will see the information for each operating system and the requirements for those. So anything, if you have a Mac, anything from 10.9 to 10.15, you're going to be able to use Chrome, any version of Chrome since 75, so 75 plus is going to be supported. And then you have all your versions of Windows. So it's just telling you the requirements. So supported device, secure browser, and then the related requirements. Specifics to that operating system. And if you keep scrolling down, you will find all of the browsers. Okay, so important information for if you have a Windows machine, you would click on the Windows and you would be able to download right from there, or depending on what type of device management system you have from a kiosk or something like that. So here's all the different ones. Again, here's Chrome. Go step by step on how to complete all the steps to install the secure browser. And these are all the current updated versions of those secure browsers. Okay, so we've kind of went over a lot of the kind of what's there, what's on the portal, kind of where we went through the portal activity. We're going to go through some program updates now, talk about logging in, and then talk about some of the universal accommodation tool updates, and just a little reiteration of some of the information that I've already talked about browsers. Okay, and like I said, a lot of links within this document. So some of the updates pertaining to the 2019-2020 testing year. January 6th, like I said, Cambium Learning Group acquired AIR, the American Institute for Research. Science Summative Assessment will be administered for grades 4, 8, and 10. That's brand new this year. Airways is replacing the ORS, online reporting system, beginning with 3 years of archived data on January. So you can go back 3 years in Airways and look at results from the last 3 years. Some new universal testing tools include a glossary and a writing assessment rubric for grade 8 and 10 for the writing assignments. Okay, those are new this year. In Tide, the status updates of those participation reports will be more current. The secure inbox will have more email-like features for secure documents, global features, quick user search, and so on. So just updating some of those capabilities within the secure inbox. The global feature, there'll be different sticky item headers, more visible context menu and dog-eared pages, and then progress bar to track students' progress. That's this screenshot right over here. Click on that. So this will update a little bit. So when a test administrators within a test looking at, or if they want to see the status of their students' progress, the screen that shows that will look a little bit different this year. Progress reports. And then a revamped navigation drop-down within the test administrator window. Okay, so actually before we do this, I am going to take a 5-minute break. And what I want you to do though, if you would, in the chat window as this break is happening, if you would put, if you have a role currently in Tide, if you know, do you have a role in Tide? And do you know your login information? If you don't have a role in Tide yet, please let us know which role you'll be playing in your school, if you'll be administering tests, if you'll be a school test coordinator, and so on. And if you would put that in the chat, then we can kind of see who we have in the room here and what kind of changes we need to make so that we can ensure that you are within Tide and can function and get into Tide. Okay, so we'll start back up at, well, let's say 10:30. So give you some time to make sure, maybe talk. If you have somebody there with you in this webinar that has a role and they can add you as a user, if they know how to do that, they can do that. But I want you to answer those questions in the chat so that we know, okay? So about 9 minutes, I'm gonna mute my microphone. Paste question, you can put questions in the chat window. So let's just take that time for now. Okay, folks, getting back here. I appreciate all of your responses within the chat window. Kelly's been typing about 100 words a minute here, trying to answer them all, and we're trying to answer them as best we can. It looks like a majority of you have roles in Tide. Some don't. It looks like there's a couple that might not have gotten a code yet. And I'm going to show you maybe to initiate that again. We'll go through that process again, and you might get it. But those of you that don't have a role yet and are not sure, what you're going to be role you're going to be playing in the testing system, you might just want to wait and talk to your school test coordinator and see, what you need to be assigned as, so they can add you as necessary. And like I said, again, we're going to talk about the user roles and different features or rights and responsibilities they have within Tide. So some of the stuff that I'm going to go through. If you do have a role, you can log in with me, and we can go through those. Those that do not, can, once you get that figured out, then you can, maybe come back to this recording and go through it again if you need help with that still, and so on, or reach out to us for help. So yeah, a lot of different roles. We have school test coordinators, quite a few of those. Tech coordinators, a couple situations, tech coordinators will be able to, their main initiative is probably just going to act as, making sure the secure browsers are downloaded, making sure the testing devices are set up properly, and so on. So, not necessarily tech coordinators and so on, you might not need to have a role in Tide if you're not dealing with managing students or creating users or administering tests. So just kind of to clarify that a little bit. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through the next part, so we kind of understand. Now, back to the SWAY here. So the login procedure is the same as last year. You're still prompted to enter a time-bound code. If after you initially, the first time this year, all user accounts in Tide have been reset since last year. So you're going to have to reset, create a password for this year, starting out if you've already done that. And you, or if you're using a new or different computer after you've done that, or using a browser for the first time, or using private mode or something like that, you may be prompted to get that code again in those types of situations. Unless the user is logging in based on those scenarios, you shouldn't be prompted for at least a year to enter that code again, to retrieve that code. And that is a time-bound code. Once it's sent, once you've initiated that, once it's sent, it is 15 minutes before it expires. So if that happens, you'll have to go back and redo the process, resend the code. Okay. A lot of times, if you are doing that, you may find that if it's not coming to your email, you want to make sure you check your junk mail to make sure it didn't end up in that inbox or your junk folder. The password requirements for creating a password. It must have at least minimum of 8 characters. Of those 8 characters, it must have an uppercase, a lowercase, some type of special character, question mark, hashtag, exclamation mark, something like that, and also a number. So those 5 aspects must be contained within that password. And then temporary, like I said, the link is 15 minutes in your email. It will stay there. And then if not, if you don't answer that email within 15 minutes, you'll have to resend it. Password expires after a year. Lockout after 5 failed attempts. So if you try, you might have to contact Cambium to reset your account, just like any other banking account or whatever, logging into online systems. So there's your requirements for the password, common login, common things that happen. If you can't log in, look for these types of things. Delayed receipt of email. So something's going on where you're not getting it right away. You know, your network or something is having problems maybe. It's kind of could happen that way. Email went to your junk folder. And the IP address needs to be whitelisted, and I'm still in the search for where that chart is, and I'm going to update that soon. Okay, and I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's more of a tech coordinator thing, where they would have to add that to the whitelist. Those are in the documents. I'm still kind of sorting through where the best place to locate that is. There's a whitelist chart coming up, but this is kind of a separate address for the email portion of the testing system. And you know, if there's something where there's a common problem where people aren't receiving these emails, you know, you can always check the portal to see if there's been an announcement for that. Okay, so in that we talk a lot about digital citizenship, cybersecurity. This is just something to keep in mind. In your email, it's always a good idea to add that well, you know, this might be changing. So I'm going to update this too, but whatever, I'll update when I get the new address. But you're going to want to add that recipient or that email where it's coming from to your contacts. So your email knows it's a trusted sender, and it will come to your inbox without any problems, hopefully. So I'll update this once I find that out. Right now it looks like it's the same, but if they change that, I'll let you know. Or I'll update it in this way. Okay, so why do we do that? As a known contact, it's less likely to appear to the user as a phishing attempt. And I think we're all becoming, having greater awareness for what types of emails we're opening. I see it on a daily basis that people are being more aware of their email, what types of links they're opening in their email. So this is just good practice to add that known contact, because that is a strange email address when you look at it. Do not reply at airask.org. I mean, so just be aware that, you know, if you want to make sure that that email is received with that code, that would be a good practice to add that to your contacts. Okay, accommodation, some universal tool updates. New universal testing tools, English glossary, we already talked about that, and the writing assessment rubric. Some new accommodation designated supports. Spanish language toggle will replace Spanish language stacking on Spanish, math, and science tests. Closed captioning will be available for audio content, replacing the need to order audio transcripts. So any videos or audio content within the test will have a closed caption available. Spanish glossary will be available as a designated support for ELA, math, and science assessments. Okay, and then the browsers, I'm still kind of looking through that. I think I've clarified the updates to those browser manuals as far as the specific operating systems Like I said, the test administrator can use any supported browser to administer a test, but the students must use the secure browser from NDSA, from that portal which we just looked at, secure browsers. Okay. So to sum it all up, last year's secure browser has to be gone, removed, and install the latest NDSA secure browser. Simple as that. Some things to be aware of, and these were also in each of those manuals, but just some overall tips on when testing. Make sure pop-ups are enabled on the test administrator's device. So you, instead of, a lot of times we're saying we don't want pop-ups on because we don't want all that stuff coming on our screen. But in this case, you want them to be on for the person administering the test on their device. Make sure all external applications are closed so that you're not interfering or accidentally closing out of something or closing out of the test while testing. Disables timeout and screensavers and so on the test administrator's device, and then the forbidden application detection settings. So, most of this is probably just a quick little check. Okay, this is good, we're good to go. And just kind of follow those types of those practices. Okay, this next section, the first part of this section kind of pertains to the tech coordinators. We're going to kind of go through it a little bit, but just so you kind of know, so you're prepared. Network considerations, testing must be done on an encrypted network. You want to open all firewalls, proxy servers, and filters. Set your network session timeouts as long as needed. Look at the test times, and you don't want to, have those timeout before the students are done testing for that period of time. And data caching cannot be on. And just make sure you prioritize NDSA testing. So, just as simple as sending a note to all your staff saying, we're going to be testing next week. Please don't be running a bunch of YouTube videos or whatever during this time. So your network doesn't have any problems during that time. Here's that whitelist chart. So those tech coordinators, I want to make sure that these are all on your level at your districts, that these have been applied to the whitelist, and these have been submitted to NDIT and applied to the state filter. Okay, so those are so at your local level, it's your to make sure that those are all set. Okay. Be sure to apply them at your own school or district filter systems. Here's some specifications for testing. I'm going to, and as part of this, I think it's coming up here, you're going to see you can test. There's some tools that we recommend for testing bandwidth around your school. So this is kind of the minimum requirements for number of students testing, and then the bits per second. So on the speeds and so on that you're looking for that minimum requirement of that many students testing, so 50. 8 is the kind of the standard for one person testing. So, just take the number times 8 of how many. So if you have 60 students, you're looking at 480 bits per second, 4K. Bandwidth consumed when opening the secure browser and accessing assessment for the first time is significantly more than when opening it subsequently. So that's because the initial launch of that browser downloads non-secure cacheable content. Okay, so just be aware of that. So the values are based on averages from a variety of subjects. Okay. Here's some network check. So moving around the building, checking from different spots where the tests are going to be administered. Probably a good idea to run a diagnostic test in there if you're unsure about your network speed. So to ensure that your capability of testing that many students from that area. There is a speedtest.net is a good website to use, but AI or Cambium. It's going to take me a while to not say AIR first. I got to change all these, but Cambium has provided a diagnostic test for anybody to use, and it's located on our practice test page on the portal practice test page. So I'm just going to quickly switch over and show you where it is. It's not a huge deal. I mean, you can come back and click this link here and get right to it. But if you're wondering where it is on the portal, if I go back to the portal and I go back home, and like I said, there's many ways to get to it, but one way is just over on the right here, training tests. Click on that, take the training tests, and right underneath where it says the sessions and the user, there's a run diagnostics button. Click on that, enter the name or the type of test. So you're going to be doing the math and enter the total number of students, 20, let's say you're going to be testing at that time. Run a test, it'll give you a report of what it thinks your network's able to handle from that point. So very nice tool to check that. Okay, and that link is right there. Take you to the same spot. There's a screenshot of it that I just showed you. It's an old one because I was running Chrome 71 a while back. Okay. Operating system considerations. These are, we've already talked about these pertaining to each operating system. So you have your Chromebooks. If you're testing with Chromebooks, you're going to go through this guide. You're going to go through it, look at all the configurations, look at the troubleshooting, and the secure browser installation guide for Chrome OS. Step-by-step screenshots, everything you need to know on how to install the secure browsers and make the configurations on Chromebooks. Same with Macs. Okay, here's the link to the document. Windows, here's the link to the document. So every one of them is separated out now. Changed from last year where it was all in one document. These are all separated for each operating system. Okay. We've already done this browser activity, so we were there. You know where to locate the secure browsers and the installation instructions. Here's the installation instructions. Well, they're also, these are the manuals for them, but the instructions are also, if I go to secure browser on the portal, they're also down in each one of these. So if I click on Windows, there's my installation for Windows. Okay. All right, so so that's where you locate those. Again, uninstall previous versions of the secure browser for all platforms. You've heard that. You're probably sick of hearing that by now, but that's you know, just want to make sure that's stressed, because we've had, you know, obviously if you forget to do that, it's going to cause some problems when testing comes. Okay. Okay, so here we are at the point of the presentation here where we're actually going to log into Tide and take a look at some of the things we can do within Tide. So like I said, if you've been added into Tide and you know your password and your login, you're going to be able to do this. If you don't know your role yet at the school and you haven't been assigned a role in Tide yet, You know, like I said, you're going to want to just follow along and come back to this. There's a lot of screenshots that are going to be coming up on each facet within Tide of managing users, or managing students, adding users, changing roles, whatever it is. You're going to see a lot of screenshots with that. So let's just let's go ahead and log into Tide. I'm gonna just give me 1 second here to clean up my tab problem here. Okay, so on the portal, back to the portal here, I'm gonna go back to the home page. You're gonna click on NDSA Assessment, and you're gonna click on Tide, okay? If this is your first time logging in this year, you're going to click on the link that says request a new one, first time login this school year, request new one for this school year. Click on that. It'll have you type in your email address and it will send you a link. Okay. If you forgot your password at any point in time over the next year or whatever, and you forget that, you will have to do a reset through this link. Forgot your password link. Okay, so I'm going to log in real quick. Oops. So hopefully everybody's getting logged in. Okay, so the reason why, so this is a perfect example of what we talked about, common login issues. So I haven't logged in on this device yet to Tide. I've been working from my Mac computer previously to do all this stuff. So this is a prime example of that happening in real time. So I'm going to go get a code, which came from AirAsked, and you will get that code in your email and enter it in and submit. And there, so that's a real world example of that happening. I'd like to say I planned that, but that's, you know, not going to take credit for that. Anyway, so let's go ahead and log in. You'll see if you've been assigned a role in Tide. If you click on user role, you'll see the role. You know, you probably won't see all these because I'm a state administrator for Tide. So I have access to all of these roles. So if you're a district test coordinator, you will see DTC and anything under that. Okay. If you're a district administrator, you will see anything below that. So, so just be aware that your screen might vary a little bit from mine. So if I click on state, I'm going to click on state administrator. You can click on your role, and I'm going to click on submit. Okay, so you can see this screen here. Okay, so some of you might be saying, well, I don't see all that stuff. Well, okay, that makes complete sense. Some roles don't have the same access as other roles do. And that's where I'm going to back out of this for just a little bit here. And I'm going to go to the chart. Okay. So what you're seeing in front of you right now is the user roles and permissions. And I want to explain this before we go through Tide a little bit, just so you have some understanding. of what that consists of. I left these the way they are. I included the way it was last year, and I put in what it looks like this year, because there's been some changes. Last year, it was required for a teacher who was also going to be administering tests to be entered twice into TIDE as a TE and a TA. That's no longer necessary. A teacher can, if you have a teacher there that they're a teacher, you're gonna want them to have access to the reports in the online reporting system. Then you only have to assign them the TE role. If you have a para or a helper at the school that's just there for the sole reason of administering tests, because you needed help with this process, you didn't have enough staff or whatever, maybe, then you just want to put them in as a test administrator, okay? Because you'll see the differences between these roles, okay? And that's the main difference between last year and this year. There's a few other minor changes, but that's the biggest update this year to those user roles. So just I'm going to click on each one for the current ones. I just put those from last year in just to show you that some things have changed. But this year, I'm going to click on it. So you can see each role at the top there. District administrator is going to be your, top of the privileges. So they have, be able to access everything and do anything. District test coordinators also have a lot of that, and school test coordinators. Okay, so adding students, and I'm going to stress this again. We already talked about it. Rob talked about it. Adding a student manually is probably not going to be very typical. That information is going to be nightly uploads from STARS. Okay, so that's typically not a task in TIDE unless it comes down to, I would check with DPI first, just to verify that it's okay to add that student. Viewing and editing students. So if you need to edit, view and edit information within that student record, you can do that at all levels. You can see the check marks here. Frequency distribution reports, all levels. Test settings and tools, all levels. Okay, viewing and editing those settings and tools within the test. Uploading test settings and tools, all levels. So when I show you the upload from, or I guess no, we're not going to talk about that right now. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Adding user accounts, the top 3 levels can do that. They add users to TIDE. View and edit user details, adding rosters, modifying existing rosters, and creating a roster. Now, I'm going to talk about rosters a little bit. So a roster, so I could, once we get into TIDE, you'll see a little more of what I mean by this, but I just want to explain it now so you have an idea. You don't have to create rosters to do tests, like to administer tests. You can just administer tests with class lists, which already exist in TIDE. Or you can use rosters. You can assign students to a roster and assign a teacher to that roster, or a test administrator. Can create that. No, they can't. I'm sorry. The rosters have to be created by a school test coordinator or above that role. But to modify an existing roster, the TA and the TE role have that. But here's the big thing with rosters. If a teacher at the school needs access, let's say you have a teacher in the district that doesn't have anything to do with the testing system. Let's say they're just, they don't administer tests, but they're a teacher of these students that took the test. Well, you're going to want to make sure that a school coordinator, test coordinator, or above creates a roster with that teacher assigned to that roster and the students in that teacher's class on that roster. The reason they have to do that is so that the teacher can view reports in Airways. So that's, I stressed that before, but not quite that detail. But just be aware that, okay, rosters, if a teacher needs to view reports in the Airways, they need to have a roster assigned to them. A roster assigned to them with those students. So you can upload rosters from different spreadsheets and so on. Printing test tickets from student lists, all levels can do that. We'll show you how to print test tickets in just a little bit here. I'm going to X out of that.